Hey everybody, this is Andrew from Fancy Football. I am really excited to share with you this video because this is going to be the first episode of the video series I'm going to be making that will follow my main fantasy football team. You saw the clips earlier in this video, but that was from my live auction draft, which was where this team was made from. I am really excited to share with you some of the values that I got for some of the players I drafted. And I also think that one cool thing that this video shows is I know we all have our own fantasy football resources that we use to help us and kind of guide us along in the season because there's just so much information out there. But I think looking at an individual kind of manage their team is one thing that a lot of the big podcasts, websites, they try and relate to you, but it just can't because, they have to go over literally every viable fantasy football player that's viable throughout the NFL season. But I feel like this perspective, I micromanage my team to heck. So I can share that with you. And I'm not the only one who owns these players. You're going to own these players too. And you can kind of see how I rank those players, how I decide to start them or sit them, or how just I'm feeling going into each and every single week. Before I get started with this video, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel so that you can keep getting these videos. I'm going to be making at least 2 of these a week throughout the NFL season. I'm going to be making recap videos. I'm going to be making thought process videos in the middle of the week to see if there's any similar waiver moves that you might want to do, kind of what my league looks like. My league is a 14-team league, and some of you might be also in 14-team leagues, and you can kind of see what our free agent pool looks like compared to yours. I think this is going to be a really fun resource. I think this is going to be really fun. So please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get started. So the name of my team is Taco Tuesday, and I am really excited to show you the values that I got some of these players for at my auction draft. The 2 players that I am just really pumped about at the values I got them were Le'Veon Bell and Joe Mixon here. I got Le'Veon Bell for 50 and I got Joe Mixon for 35. But until I show you how much the other running backs around them went for, I mean, literally these numbers mean nothing. But I just hope you can tell this right off the bat that this is an insane price for Joe Mixon. I'm going to be showing you kind of the tiers that I had all of the running backs in a little bit so that you can literally see how much cheaper I'm getting value. And I feel like that's the key phrase in auction draft. It's, Le'Veon Bell and Joe Mixon as players. We all know that they're talented, and all of us fantasy football team managers, we're all talent evaluators to a certain extent. Myself, I feel like I'm okay, but I really don't want to bank my fantasy football seasons on my ability to judge players on how well they're going to do. And I feel that way because there's just so many variables throughout a season. I mean, there's politics involved. There's literally whether a left guard is healthy throughout the whole season. That can make or break a running back season, whether they get hurt or not. I just feel like I'm not in the business of guessing that or trying to determine if this is the season where everything's going to go right or wrong. When I go into auction drafts, all I want to do is give myself the most cards at the table so that I am open to any possibility that can happen throughout the season. And the reason why I try and go for the best players at cheap values is is that I can get more of them. And if you have more of them, then hopefully you're able to survive an injury or two. Usually at the end of the fantasy football season, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this throughout your years playing, but sometimes it's just the healthiest team that ends up winning, and that's just part of the game. And how on earth are you going to be able to judge that in your auction value? Can you even put a price on that? I don't think you can. So let me show you some of the price of the other running backs that went in my draft and how Le'Veon Bell and Joe Mixon compares to them in terms of how much they went for. So this was my own personal running back rankings that I had made going into the auction draft. Obviously, these auction draft values were filled in after the draft, but these are the values that these players went for in my league. Just a quick side note on Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon down here. The reason I think that these prices went for so low was we did our draft in the first week of August, and that was when the news cycle of Zeke and Melvin Gordon holding out was just in full swing. And I definitely think that got baked into how much these players ended up going for. I just want to let you know about auction drafts. Just even the date of when you draft is so important, because that can literally affect how much players go for. And I guess you can say the same thing about snake drafts, but you can literally see it in the numbers that these players went for. The team that drafted Zeke for $48, if Elliott ends up playing for the whole year, I mean, ding, 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 he won, the draft pretty much, because Zeke can probably be a number one overall player, and he got it for about $30 less than what he would have paid if just the news was different about Ezekiel in the offseason. So it's stuff like that you have to kind of judge for yourself and kind of ask yourself how much risk you're willing to take. This is a really important league for me. So as awesome as it would have been to get Zeke and maybe fight the guy a little bit more to get Zeke for this cheap, I just got really scared away by the holdout situation because I was involved in some of the Le'Veon Bell stuff last year, and that sucked, and I hated dealing with that, so I got a little bit scared off. The two players highlighted in red are the players that I ended up getting on my team, as I showed you previously, and you can tell even on my own personal list of running backs, this is my top 10 list, and I think that I got 2 of the top 10 running backs going into the 2019 fantasy football season for just an insane value. On this entire list, Joe Mixon was the cheapest one, and I would have been happy with that. If I got Joe Mixon for $45, I would have been doing backflips. That's awesome to me, but to get him for $35, you're probably wondering, like, what happened for me to get him for $35, and to be completely honest, the variables for that are unlimited. I mean, some teams might have already gotten a running back at that point. Maybe the teams that were left wanted better wide receivers, so they didn't budget out money for a value like Joe Mixon. I just feel like, as I said in my auction draft guide video, that the reason Joe Mixon goes for $35 is because the other teams had players that they were specifically going for. And if you go into this draft with a very open mind, you're able to just kind of put your blinders on and, look at yourself and see that Joe Mixon is going for about $35. You have to jump on that, and you need to construct your roster on the fly if you weren't expecting to get Joe Mixon. So that's why I said in my auction draft video that just keeping an open mind and not targeting any players is a very key part of being a good auction drafter. Le'Veon Bell for $50, that was pretty insane too. I want to say that the reason he went for so low is because of all the risk factors. Obviously, he hasn't played in a year. Who knows if he's in shape, and who knows if he's even as good as he was before he went. But age sometimes is a pretty big factor for me in my own talent evaluation, so I kind of figured that for just how cheap it was going, that I should get him. And I actually think these were the first 2 players I drafted in the draft. So I'm this is another side note, but I'm a very big wide receiver lover. I'm actually not a big fan of running backs because I just feel like when it comes to playoff times, just the playoff weeks at the end of a fantasy football season, that there's just usually so many injuries at that point that a random backup can end up winning. I ended up winning one of my leagues last year, and I started Jamal Williams and CJ Anderson in week 17. And to be completely honest, you can probably expect for some running back like that to pop up again this year. We don't know who they are, and it's going to be our job to hawk on the waiver wire to see if we can get that player. But in terms of a foundational pair of good players in the running back position, I'm very happy with Le'Veon Bell and Joe Mixon and getting them both for a combined $85. One quick point I wanted to make was in my auction strategy, I know I keep harping on the word value, and I just really want to make sure that that doesn't get misconstrued as me saying that on this list of 10 players, you have to get the ones with the cheapest value. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you should try and do that, but if you really like Saquon, McCaffrey, or Kamara, just don't overpay for them. That's all I'm saying. Of course, you're going to have to pay a lot for these three. These three players kick ass, and they're going to probably give you a great return on investment for the auction money that you put into them. But if you got any of these players at these three prices, that's awesome because you didn't overpay, because the market valued these three players at around 76, 74, and 78. What you should never do is, if you're able to identify the market quickly, is to not pay 88 for Kamara when McCaffrey went for 74 and Saquon went for 76. Now, obviously, if Kamara is nominated first and he goes for 88 and Saquon and McCaffrey are nominated after him, it's hard to judge the market on that. But that's what makes this game really, really, really hard and fun at the same time. But that's the goal that you should be going for, is to not overpay players within the same tier, because their production is going to be, I would say, pretty similar. I don't think that at their best, Alvin Kamara's ceiling is $12 more than Saquon's. So just quickly try your absolute best to quickly identify the market, and so that you don't get burned when you could have gotten the same production for cheaper. I showed you how much the other running backs in my league went for, so now I'll show you the rest of my team and how much I got each of those players for. While I'm going over this, I'm actually probably going to be sharing with you some of my positional biases. I know I'm supposed to keep an open mind, but these are just habits and biases I just can't seem to break year after year, and I feel like some of them have been vindicated, and I'll share that. It'll be the first thing I share with you, and it will be about quarterbacks. Actually, let's just get started with that. I got Philip Rivers here for $1, and that's fine with me. You can literally fill in about 15 other quarterbacks here, and I wouldn't care. It feels like there's a trend going on right now where every single year the quarterback position just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and just the floor keeps getting higher and higher for some of these quarterbacks you can just pick up off the waiver wire. And I feel like draft auction money is so valuable, and I just don't want to spend it on a quarterback when I know that I could be using that money to upgrade my the more scarcer positions like running back and wide receiver. I've heard the term streaming, and that is kind of literally what I do every year. Actually, but Philip Rivers, potentially I can just ride with him the whole year, but even the fact that that's a possibility and I got him for $1 just shows that just quarterback is just so deep right now. So take quarterbacks late. That's probably my number one advice on quarterbacks. I already went over my running backs. You can look at my wide receivers, Mike Evans and Robert Woods. If you look at my tier list, I probably paid the most of the tier that I put Mike Evans in, but it wasn't by much, but he was definitely the most expensive one. I felt after the draft, looking at my roster, I was only in the position to get Mike Evans because of how cheap I got Le'Veon Bell and Joe Mixon. This is a pretty insane foundation of three players to start a team with, I feel like. Because if you want to look at this in snake draft terms, Le'Veon Bell, Joe Mixon, and Mike Evans, those are three players that you cannot get in round 3 of most 12 or 14 team snake drafts. So if you want to kind of look at the value like that, it's as if I got 2 first rounders and a potential second rounder in the first 3 rounds of my draft. So I'm definitely really excited about that. I think I've heard the phrase stars and scrubs be called a strategy for doing something like this, for investing in 3 high players. But I'm very confident in my general knowledge of the NFL and my ability to use the waiver wire fill out some of the holes in my teams that I can be able to do this. Obviously, some other teams like to go for depth and they like to split up this money throughout their roster, and that's fine too. I just personally have an issue of having auction value money not in my starting lineup every week. I just, I want to win every single week, and in those specific weeks, I kind of don't care about depth. I mean, I've been burned by that before by getting hurt by injuries, but I want the best players I can possibly get starting right away from week one, and it really hurts me when there's like a $20 player on my bench that I can't use because there just aren't enough roster spots for them. Robert Woods, I feel like, is a really solid wide receiver too. Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks, I believe actually they all went for exactly $21 too. If that was the case, I would have probably won Brandon Cooks, but I'll take Robert Woods. I feel like he's a little bit safer than Cooper Kupp this year because Cooper Kupp is coming off a torn ACL, and you still have to kind of see how his performance is going to be this year. So I'm pretty happy with Robert Woods being my wide receiver too in a 14-team league. I'm very comfortable with that. Tight end is another position that I kind of treat like quarterback, but I kind of shouldn't. I just feel like the position though kind of betrays me because every single year especially for the past 4 or 5 years, there's only been 2 or 3 for sure tight ends at the top of every rankings list that you can kind of trust. This year, obviously, Kelsey, Ertz, and Kittle seem like pretty trustable tight ends that seem safe to invest a lot of money into. But this year, I got burned a little bit for streaming tight ends last year, so I thought that I would try and put a little bit of money into tight end, and I ended up getting Jordan Reed for $8. I'm filming this on August 28th right now, and he got a concussion in the 3rd week of preseason, and I'm hoping he's going to be okay for the season. But yeah, that's another thing, is your players getting hurt during the preseason. It sucks. Seriously, it's the worst thing. I mean, if you can think back in the past couple of years, Jerick McKinnon, Jordy Nelson, Kelvin Benjamin, that sucks. Man, I hope no one has to go through that. Those are just the worst. If you look at my bench, typically I will have dollar players, because if you combine all of the money that I spent, that is more than $1 here, I could have definitely upgraded. Robert Woods, maybe a better flex player, but admittedly, that is one thing I messed up on, where I should have been able to convert these bench players into one more stronger starter, but it's hard. Auction drafts aren't easy, and that's definitely something that I wish I did better on. But in some weird way, I got some okay depth, I guess. And like I said earlier, you know how much I don't like that, but I'll take it. I mean, I'm probably going to end up starting Duke Johnson Jr. Oh, and this video took place after the Andrew Luck and Lamar Miller weekend that just happened. So I did get a little bit lucky, and Duke Johnson is probably going to be an okay flex for me in a 14-team league. So I lucked out on that. But I guess if Duke Johnson doesn't end up working out, I have Curtis Samuel, Corey Davis, Watkins, and Jordan Howard are probably the flexes that I would consider starting in week 1. Generally, though, I do feel good about my team. I think that this is probably one of the better auction drafts I've had. Like I said, just the depth part is weird. My benches usually never look like this. I usually have just really random handcuffs and just really insane sleepers for $1. So we'll see if this ends up working out this year. Maybe I zagged correctly in the year that zigged. So we'll see. I'm going to scroll through some of these other teams, so that you can see what the other teams look like. Thank you so much for watching this. Please subscribe so that you can keep up with this video series following my fantasy football team, Taco Tuesday. The NFL season is almost here. I cannot wait. I'm pumped. I'm pumped.